So the PC requirements for Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is out. And I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this is the strangest thing I've ever seen. This pattern of these games requiring a lot of hardware juice is wild. Now, granted, on the minimum side, the hardware juice requirements are not insane. This is pretty much what you see as, say, the recommended specs for super well optimized PlayStation games. I would argue and fight anybody that Nix's and some of the PlayStation studios are some of the best at optimizing their games on PC. Come at me. You will not win this. You can't. Don't even bother. They do a good job. They do a fantastic job in ensuring that their game literally takes advantage of even the lowest hardware that you throw on it. It doesn't matter, right? But I've also realized that a lot of other studios seem to be, I don't know. I don't know if they're struggling, or I don't know if the technologies so far have not yet necessarily been tuned to be able to take advantage of the modern hardware at 16, millisecond frame times and being able to achieve 60 FPS or using high resolution without upscaling and so on and so forth. This is where I think we have a big challenge in game development. Now, as a wannabe developer, I got to tell you, this is scary, guys, because, we're working on a little project. It's on Unreal Engine 5, and we moved it to 5.4 so that we could take advantage of some of the, performance boost. And I'm shaking in my boots. I really am freaking out, going like, what the heck? Now, this game, I don't think it was developed in Unreal Engine 4 or 5, but I've seen a lot of these other games across the board, and it's not just relegated to Unreal Engine. A lot of these engines, to me, once they're, in a position where they got to break, 30 FPS on multiple machines, it just seems like something is weird somewhere. Let's look at the requirements and let's see if I'm freaking out. Now, granted, in the Video Game 5 School Lab, thankfully, we can run this game at, the ultra settings. Not a problem. However, it's just weird that that's how far you got to really climb up the, hardware ladder to be able to get the best, performance in these games. And this is an FPS game too. Minimum requirements without ray tracing, recommended an Ultra. They're asking you for 16 gigs of RAM for the minimum and all the way to 32 gigs of RAM. Bruh, what are we punching out here? If you're running a 3D molecular model or you're running a simulation of, transcription and translation, possibly, right? And then they're asking for a GeForce 2060 or 3080 Ti in the minimum and recommended specs. And then when you want to go up to Ultra, they're asking you for 4080 or the 7900 XT. Storage is 120 gigs. Okay, we kind of are used to it. And then SSD required, GPU hardware ray tracing required, graphics setting low/resolution 1080p. Target FPS is 60. For those people who've been harping on a Steam hardware survey and we say, they have only 3060s, they're going to be fine. Those people with those 3060s are going to be fine. They're going to sit in between this particular, standpoint. The Ultra side, that's a luxury at this point because you're looking at 4K. So 1080 60 native target, that's perfectly fine with me. If they can knock 1080 60 out of the park with the 2060, I don't think anybody will be mad at them. And I think this game is also going to do something close on the console, seeing how they're asking for the 6800 here in terms of the GPU, and then the CPU is going to be using a 3600. If this works out for the minimum, this is fine. This is fine. But what I'm looking at is here, and that's where I'm going to be shouting and losing my mind. Then in the recommended side, they want to do 1440 60 FPS. So they're asking you for a 3080 Ti, 32 gigs of RAM, and or a 7700 XT. I think a 7700 XT is finally where we've come to with the conversation about the PS5 Pro. Now, I have to take a segue to, address my fellow PlayStation fans. I think we have an attitude, or we have this habit of counting our chickens before they're hatched. It's not a good way to go about things. I've seen a lot of folks say they're going to play the best version of Indiana Jones on the PS5 Pro. They say that like PC doesn't exist, and they say that almost ignoring the fact that in Digital Foundry's write-up that they finally done, talking about games like Avatar, talking about some games like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, it's a mixed bag. You never want to hang your hardware performance on upscaling. Upscaling is still very new, and upscaling has to follow scientific measures. It's not going to be able to subvert too much. Hardware is still what it's dependent on. can't run it without the hardware. It's obvious. So this game by itself is going to negate a lot of, GPUs. It's going to negate a lot of hardware out there in the market. Or there might be a mode where the developers are able to come up with something and somebody can run a batch and disable a whole bunch of stuff. Hopefully they program their game that way, and it can probably run on the 10 series, GPUs and some from the, the old school AMD coalition. When we get to Ultra, they're asking for a 4080 7900X. And then when we get into full ray tracing, we kick off with a 4070, 12 gigs. Ladies and gentlemen, all this talk about the PlayStation 5 Pro being a 4070, this is where you're about to see if your money can actually pull it off. Y'all are getting it in February, right? Okay. Please make sure you have your pros ready to go. See if you can actually match the target FPS. But the target FPS here shows that it's going for quality. DLSS 3 frame generation. You can't do that, so you're already out of the running, PS5 Pro. Buy. Only 40 series cards do frame gen. Low resolution is 1080, and then the target is, 60 FPS. There's not even an NVIDIA GPU, an AMD GPU in this whole coalition. So they basically have negated an entire, lineup of GPUs. I think ray tracing is a bigger problem than I actually thought it was. And I gotta be really upfront, for the Xbox studio that's actually doing this. Have y'all not learned? Now, don't get me wrong, ladies and gentlemen. If ray tracing is properly implemented, it can look really good. The cost of it, nonetheless, has to be severely calculated. Now, if there's a benefit to it, okay, maybe we might be able to say perhaps that works out. But at the end of the day, I don't know how exactly I need to feel about this stuff, bro. Interesting. Somebody said this on the comments, and this is again, you could check this out. I don't think they read the fine print. This is the beauty of it. Someone said this on the corner here. This person, Johnny Saigon, said, "Or get a PS5 Pro on a 48G OLED for $1,300. Call it a day." Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to spend $1,300 for that? You can spend $1,300 and you can be in the ray tracing category with ease, no problem. All this talk about the OLED TVs, I'm like, all right, keep giving Samsung money on subsidizing the OLED TV I'm going to buy one day for $200 or less. I mean, why not? I'm not going to tell anybody what to do with their money, but I'm just pointing out, the obvious. In the recommended section, you have the 4080, 16 gigs, and then the 4090 in the Ultra, where they're going to basically be running 4K resolution, DLSS 3 frame gen, super resolution presets, performance graphics set, ultra resolution 4K upscale target, 60 FPS. And these are all targets. So 1080, 1440, and 4K. That 4070, in my opinion, will be better used to punch out some more native 1440p FPS. Anybody would agree with that. Now, the ray tracing may be able to give you the beauty that you may want, but, I mean, high refresh rate gameplay is a huge segment of the market, and I'm just quite surprised that they're asking for all of this stuff at this point in time. But I have to credit them if their game actually works according to this particular chart. If it doesn't, they're cooked. But if it does, then yes, they've told you and said, you can go all the way to Ultra, but you got to have the AMD gear for it. But we know the AMD gear is not really good with ray tracing. Again, for those of you who've been touting the PlayStation 5 Pro as this big deal, look very carefully and learn. Learn something. There's a reason why there's not a single AMD GPU in here. And I will be the first to tell you, in this PC I'm recording this video with, it's my full red build. There is not an NVIDIA device inside of it. And I'll be the first to still tell you that when it comes to ray tracing, NVIDIA hold it down. And I have my NVIDIA GPUs, but I still got my AMD GPUs. You gotta, if the technology is something you want, I didn't buy them for, ray tracing nonetheless. But that's just how the cards fall. I'm going to work on another video kind of reading through this article. I'm downloading Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. Shout out to Ubi and the folk out there. Yes, I give them a hard time, but I've been giving them a hard time for many years. And so they hooked me up with this game a while back. Never even got the time to even go ahead and play it. But now that we're seeing PSSR and all of its challenges, I want to take a closer look at what Digital Foundry is saying, and maybe we can see What some hardware can do on the PC side, even without the ray tracing and all of the others. Talk to me in the comment section. What do you think? Thanks for watching. Peace out.